having other people around you who share
Mhm.
the same vision and motivation for those days when you're not feeling great, they can pick up, they can tell you to like go take a break, we got this, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And you do that for them is really motivating. And if you know that there's other people who are counting on you, who are showing up every day, it's fulfilling to be there for them in the same way that they are for you. And so I'm really lucky to have that team that I work with. That's the honest answer to your question. Like that's the
Right.
biggest motivator.
Welcome to And Then I Did This. Prepare to be inspired as we celebrate the unique journeys of individuals who've had the courage to break free and live life on their own terms. Their lives prove that you truly can be free to live your best and most authentic life. Let's get to it. Welcome to the show. Today I have a special guest. Sami Akkawi spent 5 years advising private equity firms in acquisition and growth strategies in marketing and tech, data and services. And he's now the co-founder and CEO of Petra Labs, where they're helping brands grow organically with AI tools like ChatGPT, which is the latest trend in the emergence past SEO. So, Sami, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Lou Ray, and really appreciate your time and having me on as well.
So, walk through your background a little bit and how you got where you are right now to be the CEO and co founder of a startup, which is so exciting.
Of course. So I grew up in the Chicago suburbs, surrounded by a lot of family and friends, which I'm very grateful for. And so loved playing sports growing up, staying outside. I went to boarding school at a young age. So I went internationally to go to Jordan, where I studied. And so I've kind of been independent for a pretty long time because right after that, I went to university where I was also living on my own. I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I explored a bunch of different paths. So from finance to startups to consulting. And I ended up taking a role out of college to go to the deal strategy team at PwC, where we work with private equity firms and large corporate sponsors to help advise on acquisitions and growth. And it was a really great role because it introduced me to the world of marketing, tech, and data and services, which I love. And I'm glad that that was my first experience out of college. But it also gave me the chance to see so many different companies and talk to so many interesting people. And so,
Mm.
as part of that work, I was on over 40 successful acquisitions that I had personally worked on with my teams. And I interviewed close to 1,000 senior marketing, professionals, both on
Wow.
the services side and the customer side. So people who oversee really large budgets at really big companies, marketing budgets. And so I was really, really fortunate to have a career that allowed me to see so many different types of people, companies, growth strategies, business models, et cetera, in a really fast paced environment. And so consultants sometimes get the short end of the stick because they go in and out, in and out, in and out, uh,
Right.
which, is a fair rep. But the benefit of working in that industry is you get to see a lot. And
Yeah.
so it was actually, after one of my last projects there, where I was interviewing and just continuing to interview marketing budget holders. And our job was to ask them, what do you want? What are you not getting?
Oh,
And they gave a ton of ideas. And so
right.
I thinking back because, and I'm sure we'll talk about the
Yeah.
entrepreneurial journey in general,
Yeah.
but I've always been inspired by and wanted to work for myself and start my own thing. And so I had that thought process in the back of my head as I'm listening to these budget holders at Nike and Pepsi talk about what they're not getting from their current providers. I was like, well, how can, I try and fill this gap on my own? And so I'll pause there, but that's kind of what led to the, starting the journey. And then obviously since then have launched the company and, have been really excited about that as well.
That is brilliant. That is brilliant. I mean, I've worked with some of the McKinseys and PwC, and people will typically get assigned a project and they're like locked down for a year, 2 years, or whatever length of the project. So you had the ideal spot to be able to talk to so many people over such a fast period of time.
Yeah, that's the benefit of working on the PE side of consulting is like they're quick. And so the deal cycles are pretty short once they know they want to get going. And so our projects were really 2 to 4 weeks long. and you dive in, it feels like you're in school because
Yeah.
your job is to just learn as much as you can as fast as possible. And obviously, over time, once you've seen the marketing space enough times, like, you have previous knowledge to build on and pick up on. But yeah, definitely get to see a lot of really different types of companies.
Yeah. So, talk a little bit about what you're currently doing because it's pretty unique. I mean, as AI is just like taking over, it seems like the world, you know. Talk a little bit about what you're doing and kind of what that's all about.
Yeah. So our mission is to help brands grow organically by controlling and improving the way that AI tools like ChatGPT perceive them. And so I'm a super user of ChatGPT in my personal life, right? Like
Right.
when I want to find a restaurant nearby, like I ask it to do a web search and I give it my criteria. I want bar seating, I want outdoor space, I want this price range, I want this type of food on the menu. It has to be within this radius. Go and find me a restaurant.
Right.
I use it at my startup to find the software and tools that power a lot of our sales and go to market motion.
Wow.
I use it when I'm writing emails, when I'm drafting content, all the above. And it's not just me. There's a lot of people that do that.
Right.
And so fundamentally, right, search is moving. And that personal experience that I had was validated by a lot of the really senior marketing customers that I was talking to who were saying, hey, you know, there is new data out there that we can't see, that
Right.
we don't have access to. Customers are now engaging with our brand, learning about our brand, asking questions about our brand in an interface that not only we can't control, but we can't even see. Like we don't have any tools that give us the visibility into what people are saying and
Right.
how we're being described. Is it
Right.
accurate? Is it not accurate? How can we control it?
Right.
And so that personal experience that I felt, I saw validated in real market conversations at the highest levels. And
Right.
so I started playing around with software tools and learning how to code. Eventually, we got a CTO who handles all that stuff now, who's
Yeah.
taking it much farther than I can. But we have a strong set of clients today who we're delivering services for. And so,
Oh, cool.
what we do for them is help them first see how are you
Right.
positioned and described today by AI tools. And we have software that enables them to do that. And then
Right.
we move the needle, right? And so it's about figuring out how to position your brand with a new
Right.
reader, which is a robot or an
Right.
agent, as opposed to the concept that people read your content and people consume
Right.
it. Now there's a new customer, and how
Right.
do you cater to that customer? That's what we, you know,
Right.
give unique insights into how to do.
Well, and I know like Perplexity, which I'm sure you're a user of that and obviously aware of that. I mean, it's like that I have read, and even for myself, I trust Perplexity more than I trust Google at this point because I actually saw and heard an interview of someone who was one of the original Google people, and they were talking about which having started myself in SEO way back in the day, it's like that the fact that everyone was being served a different page. Originally, it was kind of like everything rendered the same for everyone, and then everything started getting personalized. But what's your take on like Perplexity versus Claude AI versus ChatGPT? What's your take?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first I'll say too, it's not just trusting it more than Google. Like real studies have shown that people trust ChatGPT more than their colleagues and their coworkers and their friends. And it's funny nowadays. Like I'm at the dinner table when I visit home, and I'll say something, and my dad pulls up chat, and he's like, I'm going to fact check you on that. And it's just, it's a part
Right,
of life, and so that's part of the reason that even though it's a minority of search today, like Google
right,
obviously still has 90% of search volume,
right,
um, the customers that visit your site from ChatGPT are converting
right.
at much higher rates because the recommendations are
Interesting.
genuinely trusted. And so if
Right,
they're making the decision to leave the chat to go visit a site that was
right,
recommended by the LLM,
right,
they're much
right,
more farther down the purchase funnel. And so that's what
right,
brands are really starting to notice as well. And obviously that's one of the first things we do with brands is like we plug into their site hosting provider
right,
to measure the actual visitors, right? Because
right,
that's how we judge our own
right,
performance working with them. But the broader question of Perplexity versus Claude versus ChatGPT, it's moving fast, right? Like every month
yeah,
now, I think you see like a new model. GPT-5 just came out,
right,
and we began a lot of our
right,
research with that new
yeah,
model. I typically find that if you're a super user and you really care
right,
about optimizing everything, You can go
Right.
into Claude for coding. You can
Right.
go into Perplexity for anything that involves like real life brick and mortar. I typically find that
Mhm.
like for restaurant recommendations
Mhm.
or any sort of clothing recommendation or web search, Perplexity is really good. They actually
Mhm.
pioneered the web search feature. And then for general writing and everyday, I like ChatGPT personally. But
Mhm.
if I was forced to only use one of them for everything, I don't know. Personally, people have their favorites. I think I'd be fine. I was forced to use one, but yeah.
So how do you keep yourself motivated? Obviously, being in, having left the traditional paycheck kind of feel to go into your own environment, which I always will say, security is an illusion, like job security. The only job security we have is what we are capable of doing and the skill set that we've developed. So how do you keep yourself motivated, and how did you deal with those questions or challenges starting out and
No,
still?
totally,
Yeah.
totally. The first answer, which is the honest answer, is a little bit cheating because it's not something I'm doing myself. But I'm really privileged to have started this with a team
Mhm.
who also took that jump with me, right? And so we
Mhm.
all kind of quit our jobs at the same time. We work in person with each other every single day, which we believe is important when we're just getting off the ground. And so, frankly, I played around with doing stuff on my own for a little bit,
Right.
and I'll talk about how, I stayed motivated there, but, having other people around you who
Mhm.
share the same vision and motivation for
Yeah.
those days when you're not feeling great, they can pick up, they can tell you to like go take a break, we got this, and vice versa.
Right.
And you do that for them is really motivating. And if you know that
Right.
there's other people who are counting on you, who are showing up every day,
Right. Yeah.
um, it really is, it's fulfilling to be there for them in the same way that they are for you. And so I'm
Right.
really lucky to have that team that I work with. And they're probably like, that's the honest answer to your question. Like that's the
Right.
biggest motivator. But beyond that, it's actually, I mean, what you describe is one of the biggest mindset shifts of going
Mhm.
from my previous job to
Mhm.
here, which is in
Mhm.
my previous career, there was instant gratification all the
Right.
time,
Right.
right? When you finish a 3 week project, you get your review, you get like a thumbs up, you're doing really good. They tell you it's a great job. The manager likes you. So you go to the next project and you get a bit more responsibility and you see the results instantly.
Right.
And then on top of that, you're getting your paycheck every 2 weeks
Right.
and you're getting your bonus conversations every year. And so there's just constantly
Mhm.
reinforcement that what you're
Mhm.
doing is working and you're getting something out of it.
Right.
But one of the tough parts about doing this is, I know that a lot of the work I'm doing now isn't going to be fruitful for another 6 to 12 months.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's difficult because you don't see
Right.
the instant result that you
Right.
typically would.
Right.
Um, and so my mentality for that is shifting what a win means.
Yeah.
So a win for me is less so about outcomes and more so about
Mhm.
process. And
Mhm.
so, the times that I let myself celebrate is not when a specific goal is necessarily achieved, but when I am consistent about the steps that I'm taking to get to that goal. Right.
Right.
And so it's a bit of a mindset shift where like a win in my book is I'm sending out X number of emails every day, having X number of conversations every day, writing X number of articles every day. Whether or
Right.
not I see the results, like just staying on that path and being
Right.
consistent with the process, I think is really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I hear you a lot. It's taking me back to when I was awarded the funding by Entrepreneur Magazine, and I chose founders who were based in Poland, so in Warsaw, and we launched a blockchain startup. And just that whole journey, I mean, we ran into COVID, so we had our initial success and got our initial clients, but yeah, it's kind of that grind and staying committed to the vision. And you're sitting in that CEO spot, so you're kind of like guiding the ship along with your cohorts doing it with you, which is awesome that you have people that you like to work with that are in the same journey, on the same journey with you. That's which is pretty cool. Yeah. So
Totally.
what is your vision for where you like ideally would like to go with this at this point? Like I know things change along the way, but
Yeah. So our our perspective here is that there is a much broader shift coming to performance marketing and
Mhm,
marketing services in
mhm.
general. And we believe, and this is part of the reason that we started with this company, we believe that generative engine optimization, is
Right.
the wedge that's going to drive that broader transition. And so we
Mhm,
believe that the people who are able to win in generative engine optimization
mhm,
by really understanding how the models work and owning
mhm,
the growth that comes from delivering
mhm,
the geo services are going to have a right to play in a much broader space where
mhm,
AI tools, we believe, are going to make marketers across the board significantly more productive and
mhm.
effective
Right.
and increase their potential to do work.
Mhm,
And part of what we've started building internally that hasn't been publicly released yet is agents that support us in the
mhm,
workflows we're doing. And so obviously
mhm,
we're doing all the interventions for our customers by hand,
mhm.
but we're building software in the process that's internally facing for the time being that's enabling us to do that. And we believe that the same tools that we're building for ourselves to make our jobs easier, faster, more effective can be
Right.
pushed at scale to
Mhm.
performance marketers and growth marketers in general. And
Right.
so, big dreams in general for where we
Yeah.
think this can go.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Sky's the limit. The sky's the limit. What words of advice would you give someone who's sitting in a day job who feels, I think you were smart. You were in a role in your consulting role that will sustain, but I know, yeah, and I'm sure you've seen the trends or projected trends for consultants and that kind, doing that type of work that, because of AI, it's going to streamline those jobs. But and probably eliminate or change what they're doing. What you were doing, it takes a human to interview, a human to be able to pick up those nuances that you were able to hear live. But for anybody out there who hasn't taken the plunge but knows they should be looking at something else, want to be looking at something else, what advice do you have for them?
No, totally. And maybe like pulling a bit from another question you might ask about like what the
Hmm.
inspiration was, but what
Yeah.
you said at the beginning is exactly right, which is we're facing a tech revolution right now, and a lot is going to change. And if you're pretty senior in your career and you have 10, 15, 20 years of experience and you've built really domain specific expertise
Hmm.
and a reputation and a network and
Right.
a brand, you're fine, right? Like
Hmm.
you're not getting substituted anytime soon. But if you're a bit younger in your career, there are question marks about what the job market's going to look like in general. And so for me, you know, I was watching all of these startups pop up who kept saying, like, we're going to replace this, we're going to replace that, we're going to do this, we're going
Yeah.
to do that. And I was like, how am I going to stake my claim on
Right.
this wave? Right. Like,
Right.
I'm, you know, I'm in a position where I'm like have some work experience, right, and a
Right.
career that I can bank on, and I can go
Right.
back into the workforce if needed.
Right.
But there is so much that is changing that I was genuinely a bit afraid that this might be one of the last times to create true enterprise value and
Right.
impact and build something great um, without technical skills. 'Cause I'm not a software engineer. I'm
Hmm.
not an architect
Right.
uh, or a doctor. And so the protections around me are maybe a bit less around some of those other types of people. And so that was really kind of like the initial spark and the fire.
Mm.
That plus moving to New York. And this is like the other, I think, big answer to your question is be around the types of people that you dream of being. And so
Right.
moving to New York, I think for me in general, I just started meeting people playing basketball at the gym, through friends of friends, through work, that were all doing really cool and inspiring things for themselves. And that doesn't necessarily mean all of them were rich, right? Some of them were
Right.
making less money than me, but they were founders and like chasing their own dreams and
Yeah.
being surrounded by people who that's all they talked about was like
Right.
building something for themselves and serving
Right.
their own customers and working on something they cared about was a huge, huge driver
Yeah.
of the spark and the decision to go and do this.
Right.
Because when you're just surrounded by those types of conversations and those types of people, and shout out to you as well, because you would talk about this all the time on LinkedIn and I would read your posts. And that's like part of it's a part of that whole wave of surrounding yourself with the types of people, the types of content, the
Yeah.
types of material that you one day want to chase.
Yeah.
And it's truly, you know, it's category shifting the impact that just a couple of extra people in your life you talk to every day,
Right.
or just so different than your usual,
Right.
circle can have.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Because we do elevate to the circle, the five closest people to us. We're
Yeah,
either going to elevate up or we're going to, we're going to, you can't elevate down, but yeah, like, you're directly influenced by the people that are in your circle. Yeah,
yeah,
for sure. So inspiring, so inspiring. Well, I'm on your team. I'm like, cheer you on and watch you go because I know I'm reading exactly what you said. I mean, everything from we'll be seeing the first $1 billion solo business soon by virtue of the people that are starting out, all the way to startups like yours who have all kinds of potential. I mean, so many different directions that you can go and ways that you can carve your lane and do your thing. And, I just say, abundance, if money's one thing, the other is having autonomy to live life on your terms, to feel that freedom to do work that inspires you, that you don't necessarily have a boss over your head, determining, raising your hand to take a day off, that kind of thing. So, it's inspiring just to be free to, which is why you can be free. And just having that freedom and autonomy to pursue something that really is fun and exciting to you, and is helping others, in the same vein while
yeah.
you're
The only catch might be that once you have that freedom, you use it a bit less. And so I'll say I took more days off in my previous job than I do now, but for different reasons,
yeah,
and it,
yeah,
it feels it feels very different.
yeah. And then, yeah, it's like I will say, even myself, like I will work doing my own things. Like I say my own things, like doing work like on the weekend, but it doesn't feel like work because I've woven work around my life. So I have my life and then work is part of that, but I can get lost in doing what I do, which is, where it doesn't feel like work. It is more like enjoyable because it's something that inspires you and it's something you want to do. And you can
Totally.
see what the impact is. And yeah. So, what would you say? What ways have you expanded and grown since stepping out on your own?
The biggest one I would say is ownership.
Mm,
Um, I was a I had thought that I had a full grasp of this because on my previous team, I was a manager and I was like leading a team of people. And I had to like, even when somebody else underneath me was doing the work,
mm,
I had to own it as if it was mine because it was still
right,
my name on it. And I had thought I had reached the maximum level of ownership that you could possibly
right,
achieve. But
right,
it's a completely different beast when like literally everything falls on you at the end of the day. And when also, and this is maybe a bit unique because I came from consulting, there's no end date in sight, right? And so
no,
my project is not ending, next Friday or two
right,
Fridays from now. It's indefinite. Um,
right,
and so now having my own clients that like, we have multi-month, oftentimes up to a year agreements with where we're delivering for them, month in
right,
and month out. And like,
right,
we are responsible if the results that we are promising aren't going to come. I think
right,
has been a huge area of professional growth. I think that might have taken me a lot more time to get in a more traditional
mhm,
career as opposed to it being condensed now into
right,
a much
right.
smaller time frame. Um, and I think that, yeah, that's probably the biggest one.
Yeah. And I would say going back to what you said about like feeling like, you're taking less time off now than you did before. it's not always going to be this way. Like you're in the real heart of startup mode. So it's the
Yeah.
get it done and get it moving, get it in place. And then you will have that moment where it's like, okay, we've got a rhythm. Things are flowing. And I mean, it's amazing what you're doing because I know there's so much need out in the market. So I think, you're totally on the cutting edge of something that brands need, that agencies need. It's huge. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's huge. So you'll be taking more time. You'll be taking more time. And then it's like the other thing we always have to also ask ourselves is how much is enough? Like, because as I found, getting to the place I was at, money and title and eh, you know, I'll say power. I didn't ever look at it as power, but I was actually in a role where we were Google's biggest customer, but that doesn't make you happy. Like that doesn't lead to happiness or contentment. And so knowing what does make you happy and making sure you're doing those things in addition to whatever the work is you're doing, you like what you're doing, and then make sure you have time to do the other things. Everything falls into place. I mean, hearing you're playing basketball and meeting people and doing stuff like that. I mean, going out, to dinner. I mean, having lived in New York, there's never a shortage of things to
There's
do for
never,
sure.
yeah.
So as I know you said some things around what you've done, but words and adding some words around inspiration to other people to be true to themselves. What would you say to people out there?
Yeah. I think the big thing is that a lot of people, both when they look at themselves and when they look at others, judge the capabilities of themselves and other people based on the positions and responsibilities they've held in the past. And so,
Right.
you know, something that was really important to me, as a manager when working with juniors who want to grow and develop is I'm not going to limit my expectations of this person because they haven't had the chance to demonstrate those in the past,
Right.
right?
Right.
And what I've found is that in the vast majority of situations, even when somebody has never done something difficult or as difficult as you're giving them or as high up as you're giving them,
Right.
people adapt to the responsibility that they're given and they
Right.
grow into that position and that role. And it was
Mhm.
actually a point of contention sometimes between me and my partners where they were like, you're giving like too senior tasks to people who are too junior. And
Mhm.
I was saying they want to grow and they haven't been given the chance to do that. Like if we don't create an
Right.
environment for them to fail and grow, when whoever like is going to do it for them,
Right.
right? And I think the people who worked with me really appreciated that I was one of the few managers who was willing to allow
Right.
people to step into the more
Mhm.
senior positions even before they've had a
Mhm.
chance to prove it. But the flip side is then expecting that of yourself, right?
Right.
Just because you haven't yet had the chance to show
Right.
what you're capable of and prove
Yep.
it is in no
Mhm.
way correlated with your ability to do those things. And I think
Right.
people often limit their expectations of themselves to
Right.
the outcomes and roles they've delivered and held in the past. And it's
Right.
so important to break that self-imposed prison around you.
Right.
Um, there's my friend said always sends me these like inspirational quotes. One of them that I really really like has something to do with how the scariest prisons that we stay in the longest are the ones that we build around ourselves. Um,
Right.
and it couldn't be more true. So give yourself the
Right.
chance to fail and learn and grow. And I think people, will be surprised by what they are capable of when the
Right.
responsibility is on them to deliver.
Right. Yeah. And I think, people often stay somewhere because they either can't see that they could be doing something else or they don't think they have the right entrepreneurial mindset or whatever. And exactly what you said, people will grow into it. And if you stay connected with people who are also doing things, even if you're not in the same business together, but like minded people, because I have that circle of people that are either doing their own thing, well, just like the LinkedIn cohort that I just did. I mean, it was like 100 people around the world who were all talking about growing, and we're every day posting things to inspire others to be their best self, be their best version of their leadership, or like in my case, step out into your own thing. Don't, all you need is 10% more knowledge than someone who's looking to learn something new, and you can teach them and start a business around it. I mean, there's so many things that people can do that they just have no idea. So, what are your final words of advice, would you say, for people listening and wanting to do maybe something on their own and haven't done it yet?
Good question. I would say that there is no reward without risk or without skin in the game. And so, the ability to be okay with losing and with failing and with giving up something. And I think it's important to know that people are in different positions than others, right? And so it might be easier said than done.
Right.
um, will pay off in dividends. And so it hasn't paid off for me yet, so I can't really talk as much. But I think that there has to be, it's okay to take risk and be willing to lose. And without that, it's going to be difficult to see the other side.
Right. Well, I think if we just envision the photos we've all seen of Jeff Bezos in whatever his garage or whatever his small office space with his, square computer back in the day. I mean, how did he know? And there's no way he could have. He started selling books
Yeah.
online, and that's like, look now, like So you never know where you're headed, but having at least a vision and a dream to chase and pursue in my book is like better than just waiting for a paycheck on Friday, because I called a job just over broke, because your income, is set at a certain level when you're an entrepreneur. Like it's up to you to decide, like, what do I want to do? And what's the goal I'm setting, and how will I get there? And then work backwards from there. I mean, there's lots of ways to do it. So I think you're an inspiration. We're just going to have you back on once once you've circled further down the path. We'll just have you come back on and give everybody an update.
I would love that.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Lou Ray.
And that's a wrap on another episode of And Then I Did This, celebrating the lives of those who've walked away from the beaten path to pursue work and a life that nourishes their soul. If you're feeling inspired and ready to explore your own path to freedom, check out youcanbefree.life, where you'll find resources and support to help you break free and live life on your own terms. See you next time.